Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tiff's Industry Director, Kathleen Drum, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the second of 3 exclusive sessions we have in partnership with The Guardian. A reminder before we start that please no photography or video recording is allowed inside the studio. However, this session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and our YouTube channel, where you'll be able to find it online. Please do feel free to tweet using the hashtags on the screen behind me to keep the conversation going with our online audience. Our focus today is on the duo behind one of the most successful independent film production companies in the history of cinema, Working Title. Our host today is Peter Bradshaw, who is the influential and highly regarded chief film critic of The Guardian in London, where he has worked for 18 years. He has also published 3 novels, Lucky Baby Jesus, Dr. Sweet and His Daughter, and Night of Triumph. His short story Reunion was published this year in the compendium Best British Short Stories 2017. Multi-talented. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Peter Bradshaw, who will introduce our special guests.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Thank you to Kathleen for that overwhelming rehearsal of my CV. My goodness, how embarrassing. My name is Peter Bradshaw. I have the honour to be the chief film critic of The Guardian in London. It is my very great pleasure and thrill and delight to be introducing this ultra-special Guardian Tiff talk. I'm going to be bringing on stage shortly 2 people who are basically legends. I hesitate to use an analogy based on superhero franchise movies because I'm not sure that they like it, but they are basically the Batman and Batman of the British film industry, or maybe the world film industry. 12 Academy Awards, 100 plus substantial feature film credits, $6 billion in worldwide box office receipts. And it's founded on the idea that if you offer the public movies based on story, character, ideas-driven material, screenplay-driven material, they will be grateful and they will come along. They have given us the cream of the cream of the modern reinvention of the romantic comedy in the form of Notting Hill and 4 Weddings and a Funeral. They've given us some of the best work by the Coen brothers, including The Fargo and The Big Lebowski. They've given us Land and Freedom by Ken Loach, and so many other things as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I want to do right now is to show you, if this is possible, please, a taste of what they have achieved. If we could play the reel, please. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bevan and Eric Fellner. Gentlemen, welcome, welcome and thrice welcome. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, everyone, for coming. What I want to do, incidentally, what I should say is I'm going to curate, I think, perhaps is the fashionable term, a conversation. But I want to leave some time at the end, maybe 10 minutes, for questions from the audience. So if anything occurs to you, please save it up for the end of the session. Although I should say that what we do want is questions rather than statements. So if somebody has a question for Tim and Eric, that would be amazing. I want to ask you, are you guys regular visitors to Toronto? Do you come here every year?
Yeah, we're fortunate enough to be invited occasionally.
Yes, I understand.
And
yes.
when, like all good guests, when we're invited, we show up.
Actually, we were just at a function where somebody was saying, I've been coming here for 26 years, and I thought, oh, he's a junior, basically.
Yeah.
Laundrette was, I think, 31 years ago.
You came with Laundrette?
You came with Laundrette?
Yeah.
Amazing. And this is...
I'm obviously a lot younger. I'm a lot younger than he is.
Surely you were still at prep school then.
I was still at prep school, yeah.
But this is, I mean, rightly or wrongly, people think of Toronto, I know it's vulgar to say this, but they think of this as the starting gun for the awards season. Is it kind of nervous to come here? You're thinking, these are our runners and riders?
Yes and no, it's a fabulous festival. It's because it's a real audience, and there are other festivals that are more scary, I think, because ultimately one's playing to real people always in this, and like we had a fantastic screening last night of Victoria and Abdul, didn't we? Where you could absolutely feel this was the audience for the film, and that it's like that across all of the different sorts of films that we've done.
Yeah, I think we're also quite lucky because our material is usually British.
Right.
And Canadian audiences are very generous towards British content.
Right.
So yeah, we've been very fortunate in the reaction our films have had. But in answer to your question, it's like we see these films, the specialist films, as it's like a hurdle race, and you have to keep jumping hurdles.
Right.
And this is, you're right, the first of those.
This is the first one.
Yeah.
And do you come to the first screening, and do you guys sit at the back or stand outside in the foyer and watch people, or can you relax when you watch movies?
There's always a bit of adrenaline when you're watching a film.
Yeah.
First, in its early incarnations with an audience, and to see whether they react, and if it's a comedy, whether they laugh, if it's a drama, if they're quiet. It's a visceral and somewhat nerve-wracking experience, and it still is. And I guess that's a good thing. We've been at it a long time, but we still get nervous at these things.
And do you turn up to the...
He's very calm. I'm like Max Bialystock from the producers, freaking out at the back.
Yeah. Well, actually, as I've got older, I think there's very little difference between absolute tragedy and absolute victory, in actual fact, in terms of films.
Yes, exactly. And do you ever show up...
They both last about the same length.
Yeah. Do you turn up to the press conferences as well, or do you leave that to the director and the
I tend to leave it. I don't know, what do you do?
Yeah, no, my attitude, I mean, this is quite rare. Nobody usually wants to hear what producers have to say, so thank you.
Shame.
But yeah, we tend to leave it to the talent and the directors to do the talking, and the writers. And occasionally we'll do a press conference, or if there's a specific reason for it. But I think most people, in a visual format, they want to hear from the talent.
They want to hear from the talent, yes. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No,
nothing. I was going to say, just to sort of wind back a little bit, I have a sort of a mea culpa, really. The first movie I ever reviewed professionally was one of yours, was Notting Hill. Okay.
No doubt you gave it no stars.
I probably gave it a minga. True, I'm very sorry and ashamed.
2 stars of this man.
No, not 2 stars. Yeah. No.
We have history here.
I'm
sure it won't take long to come
We'll just get that out. We'll just make him squirm a little bit.
We'll get onto the subject of the hateful critics in a minute.
It's actually a miracle we're still in business.
It's a miracle I'm still alive, Eric, to be honest with you. But I'm sorry and ashamed to say I gave Notting Hill it wasn't a bad review, but it was a kind of minging review, as to use a technical term, an obtuse review. And looking back on it now, I sort of see now what I didn't see then, which was that romantic comedy played at that pitch, that level of ingenuity and originality. If I'd have known then what I would now know, there were so many people who were going to try to rip it off, so many people who were going to try to clone it and try to do, as it were, Richard Curtis or Hugh Grant comedy, I would have been a little bit less ungrateful, I like to think, that I was at the time. And the scene in it, which has almost become a meme, really, I think we saw a bit of it there, is Julia Roberts saying, "I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy." I think that's an amazing scene, actually. And even at the time, I like to think I understood it now. It was an amazing scene. I think it's Julia Roberts' best performance, really, that movie. I think it's sort of incredible. I love Notting Hill now.
Yeah, I mean, Richard is a remarkable writer, and he makes simple things. He managed to simplify what people are saying, but actually it's extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
What he does, and there was a very good run of movies, starting with Four Weddings and Notting Hill and the Bridget movies and Love Actually, which were absolutely...
Mr. Bean.
And Mr. Bean, and that all came from Richard and Rowan, and that was very much the sort of springboard for working time.
The movie I think of, I would go slightly earlier back to say the Tall Guy, which is such a funny movie, and incidentally Emma Thompson's feature film debut, come to think of it.
Yeah.
An amazing and rather moving. I was watching her in the Children Act to think of
actually, it's funny because I don't think she's done anything with Rowan since then, and we're doing a Johnny English movie at the moment, and they're on the set together.
Oh, really?
Day, yeah. And it took me back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's such an amazing film, directed, of course, by the late great Mel Smith.
Yeah.
But that brings me to Four Weddings, and rightly or wrongly, I think of Four Weddings in a Funeral as the great sort of years. I mean, obviously, Working Title had been in business for years before Four Weddings, but that was the big beginning of everything. And people think of it as a way, the beginning of a kind of new British export market to the United States, and a type of movie, a trope, if you will, which Working Title kind of invented in some ways. When you look back on that movie, do you think, yes, this is where it all started?
Well, I think both of us had been making films independently and then together for quite a long time before that. So it was kind of good that it took that long to have a film that really worked. So we understood the vagaries of the business and how it can love you and then hate you, as it were. But I think that what we discovered with Four Weddings and a Funeral was that you could make a non-American English language film that would find a gigantic audience around the world, and particularly outside of America, actually, is that always our figures have been very huge in foreign, before foreign was trendy, as it were, and before the market expanded as much as it has. And actually, not only in comedy, but then in all of our movies, as we sort of zoned into that and realized that there was an opportunity to make English language films that would work all around the world.
I agree. The other thing it did, though, was it was the first time that we'd had a hit working with a company that had proper distribution.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, as producers, we used to piece our films together with a bit of money here and a bit of money there and a pre-sale here and a pre-sale there, and you know, you'd make the films as good as you can. It was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. They never really blew out. No. And this film, Four Weddings, won the fact that it was a great film and that it was commercial. But you really got to see how, when you had one company distributing it in many territories, how they could really push that and generate a lot of extra revenue from it. So it taught us that distribution is a really key piece of the puzzle, and
we've been very fortunate since that, you know, because that was in the days of Polygram, but then subsequent to Polygram, we've been with Universal. And both owners, if you like, have allowed us to have a lot of creative freedom and choose the films that we want to make, which is what we've fought for. But then we've had this amazing thing of centralized distribution, so that when that machine switches on, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and it strikes me you almost have a relationship with Universal that, as it were, a director might have with a studio, that you are that.
Well, we've had the good fortune
Stanley Kubrick with Warner Brothers or whatever.
Well, with both Universal and Polygram, we had the very good fortune that they run in Universal, and they ran in Polygram their foreign operation out of London, so that it meant that we are able to be all over the campaigns, basically, and be very much part of the way these films get marketed and the way the campaigns come together. I mean, Eric's been working crazy hard on both Dark Star and Victoria and Abdul to get the campaigns to absolutely as sharp as possible.
Does that take up all your time? I mean, people say, you know, what does a producer do? Well, this is part of what a producer does.
Well, at the end of the film, that's what producers do.
I mean, we see the most critical pieces of making the film as, you know, putting it together correctly, you know, developing, getting the right talent attached, getting the right finance distribution, getting all of that set, and then the final half, which is editing, getting the best cut, marketing and distribution. If we've made all the right decisions at the beginning, then the actual shooting should go brilliantly. It doesn't always,
but you shouldn't be running interference while shooting, because if you look at the way the finances work on a film, is when you're shooting, you're spending $200,000 a day. When you're in pre-production and in post-production, you're spending $5,000 or $6,000 a day. So you don't want to be running interference when that amount of money's being spent. But you need to have done the packaging and getting the script right.
But that's what it's about. Yes, it's about laying the groundwork, presumably.
Yeah, it's absolutely getting the foundations right.
And from what I know is that it's about hiring the talent and letting them get on with it, presumably.
And then B, what I think we both do is we then watch we're part of the whole process and all the rest of it, but you watch what they're shooting very, very carefully, because it's all too easy when you're on a film set and it starts to rain or somebody's got a toothache for that to take over, basically.
Right.
And of course, it doesn't matter at all in the ultimate scheme of things, because what goes down on the screen is what matters, and that's what we have to absolutely keep our eye on all the time to make sure you're getting the material.
And are you watching, I mean, are you sort of, as it were, watching dailies or something? Yeah.
And now that they're streamed and all the rest of it.
Yeah, yes.
That's, you know,
you don't have a traditional screening theatre where you.
We do, but
you watch them on your phone in the bath. So.
I thought it was like, as it were, David O. Selznick saying, "Stop! What the hell is this? This doesn't look good." Yeah.
No, we're very lucky. We have fantastic offices with a screening room, with cutting rooms on the same floor, so we can stream all the rough cuts into the screening room and watch films, you know, on a big screen rather than just on a small monitor, which a lot of people have to do. So you can really feel how the big screen experience is coming along during the process.
But it is important to say what you think from dailies, and because it's quite scary, particularly in a screening room when everyone's lined up. And I remember on a film that will remain nameless, I was watching dailies one day, and I was absolutely certain that one of the cameras, the images were soft, basically.
Right.
And I thought, is it me? Am I going blind? Or, you know, and it took me about 10 minutes to have the guts to say, I think this is out of focus. And everyone then goes, oh, yeah. Ooh, it's out of focus, isn't it? But you also have to say if somebody's performance is shit, or if this is that, or whatever. You have to have that. And it's funny because it's something you have to break down.
Yeah, exactly. It must be terrifying for the director to be in the room with you guys, mustn't it? I mean,
it's so simple and so lovely. We actually, just on that, without being flippant, our lifeblood is our directors. And, first of all, thank you for such a nice introduction. That was very generous.
Well,
but you're so right, it's all about the directors. And we've been very lucky to work with some of the world's greatest directors on a regular basis. And a lot of what we do is creating an environment for them to be brilliant within.
Right.
So, no, we try not to be scary or heavy-handed or anything like that. No. It is about, allowing really talented people to do what they do best.
Yeah, because the thing is, the film business per se is nuts, because it's like every film you go out to make is like starting a new business. Yeah. Particularly unless it's a sequel, and we have some sequels, but it is like starting new businesses, and it's all of the challenges of starting a new business, of marketing and all the rest of it. And the only thing that we can get continuity with is the talent that we work with, and that mitigates that to a large extent, and particularly the director. So, the two festivals in the two movies in the festival are both products of big repeat businesses. 5 or 6 movies, 6 or 7 movies that we've made with both Stephen and with Joe.
Right, and. Yes, I want to talk about Victoria and Abdul and Darkest Hour in a little while. I wanted to ask you about something that I know you've spoken to me about, which is superhero movies and franchise movies. And are they a good thing or a bad thing? Because in one of our Socratic email dialogues, Eric, you have raised this subject with me.
One of the ones where I went, how the fuck can you review this film that bad? One of those ones.
I'm not making stupid superhero movies here. Give me some credit. And I can't apologize enough for whatever ill-informed review that was about. I'm sure there are many you could choose from. But what do we... that seems to be one of the big discussions for the industry is the idea of the tentpole and superheroes, and how it seems to be the case that any actor who wants to get on had better swallow his or her pride and try on the lycra, because they're going to be able to play a superhero. And is it... maybe the superhero movies are a good thing because they stimulate interest in the industry, and this will have a kind of trickle-down effect. Or is it just dumbing us down so much that our palates are becoming jaded, and we can't see original material?
Well, Eric,
what do you think?
Yeah. No,
is this something you...
I think it's potentially dangerous, but there's nothing wrong with it. If you make a good film, doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. It has validity in the world, and a lot of these films are attracting an audience, so there's an audience for it. Will we make them? No, because we don't own the IP, and we probably don't understand how to make those types of films, but I think there's nothing wrong with them whatsoever. The problem for us is, like we're having it right now on a film we're putting together. What happens is the studios that make these films, they book the actors, and then they get God knows how many sequel options on them. Yeah. And so you can never book a good actor, because he has to hold himself free for whichever studio it is that might then want to do a sequel to this one or that one or the other one. So it's really difficult in terms of getting some of the great talent.
Yeah, that's really changed in the last 5 or 6 years. The superhero movies and the long-form miniseries, the Netflixes and the Amazons and all the rest of it, where talent gets booked up for a massive amount of time. And actually, so all of a sudden you're having to book somebody, you know, where are we in September? You're booking their next June or July slot. And it's sort of crazy, and that's changed quite a bit.
I hear that particularly Star Wars is a
Star
huge
Wars,
problem.
All of them, all of the DC, the Marvel, all
and they're the payers. That's the thing, and so you completely understand it as an actor or whatever.
Exactly. That's not so huge.
Yeah. But I think that the potential danger, which is not pointing fingers anywhere other than at all of us in the industry, is that if the quality of the films and the variation of the films isn't maintained, then I think, and we're probably in an area that it's starting to wobble, the audiences will migrate to, as they are, to games, to Netflix, to digital.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that, and I think it goes all the way. You know, it's amazing. We're shooting a live-action movie in Scotland at the moment, and a lot of the crew have come off these superhero movies and things like that, and they're just so relieved to be out shooting something real rather than against blue screen. So I think that in the DNA of actually making the film, you're getting this tiredness amongst everybody, and I think that is a dangerous thing, actually.
Yeah, like all the studios in England are just book solid for these huge sequels, and you go on the stages and it's just green screen everywhere.
Yeah.
And a few props, and the crews are getting a bit bored of it,
and
so they love
it. That's a bad thing.
And it is, an
so
innovating experience, I suppose.
On Baby Driver as well, we managed to get an incredible crew, because they love the idea that we were doing real car chases, and Edgar was shooting everything for real, and they hadn't worked like that in years.
Such a great movie. I hope everybody's been to see Baby Driver, because it's such a fun movie, such a great film.
Thank you. 5-star review at The Guardian.
5-star review for me. I clawed it back from Eric there with a bit
of crawling, scratching back.
Just a little bit, not entirely. But you mentioned Netflix. This year, the Cannes Film Festival, Netflix became a big problem that the local French industry got on their high horse, in a way, about Netflix, and they almost pressured the Cannes Film Festival to withdraw Netflix films from the competition because they didn't have enough of a commitment to the cinema and the cinematic experience. What do you think about Netflix? I mean, is Netflix a problem? I mean, I know you guys are interested in TV and have you're interested in series.
Because in fact, going back to romantic comedies, a lot of romantic comedies get seen on Netflix and all the rest of it. I think the industry's still going through a transition right now, and you've got the Netflix and the Amazons and everybody who are the big new players, but you also have the studios who are contending with the shortening of windows and all the rest of it.
Right.
And I think that it's all still chucked up in the air, and it'll land, and there'll be some new way that the whole distribution thing works, which will still involve people going to the cinema, and it will also involve people watching these things everything in their home as well, because ultimately that's what the consumer wants to do. I mean, Netflix is only playing to the consumer at the end of the day.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have a problem with watching films on a small screen. I'd rather do it on a big screen. But when I think of when I first saw great movies, actually it was on television. And a lot of us, if we're honest, the first time we saw great movies was on TV. Yeah. I remember when I first saw The Searchers, it was on Saturday night, or on a BBC series called Saturday Night at the Movies, after Bruce Forsyth and the Generation Game. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And I responded to it as cinema. I couldn't have told you why, but I knew that it looked different from a television program. But that's another thing I want to ask you, because this is a big theme at TIFF this year, is storytelling and the art and craft and science of storytelling. And has that been modified or changed in any way by long-form television? Is the material that you're seeing changed by that at all? I mean, we all speak as if it's very important, but is it just the same thing as ever? What do you think?
What, the long-form being long movies? Or?
Well, no,
I just 10 hours as opposed to...
Long-form television seems to be making an investment in character and personality. The idea that you watch it every week and you make an investment, and, as it were, the character of Don Draper or Tony Soprano enters your bloodstream after a while, and that's a luxury that maybe feature films don't have. Do you think it's... Does that
I think it's always been down to the quality of screenwriting, to be quite honest. And if you have a screenwriter like a Richard Curtis or a Lee Hall, or, we're just doing a movie that Beau Williman's written at the moment, where they are full-on character and full-on narrative, and they're great technicians at it, then they can do it in 90 to 100 minutes and make it very, very satisfying. But it's a very, very, very difficult skill.
But I think the great thing about the long form is what was happening is all the great writers were being sucked up by the studios to do 1 or 2 week rewrites on, you know, superhero films.
Right.
And they weren't actually writing great material.
No.
And now they're able to, because they can write all of those wonderful stories.
But they're all moaning because it's so much work. But they're all moaning because it's so much work.
It's huge work.
Yeah, that's right. They are moaning it's a lot of work. But at least they're writing now, and that will then filter back into film, and there'll be original films being made, and, you know, hopefully it'll all work out.
To be quite honest, it hasn't changed that much. It's difficult to find a decent writer. It's difficult to find a decent director. It's quite difficult to get it financed. And it's always been sort of equally, and there's always been different places to go. But ultimately, you know, what Richard Curtis actually really taught me was that it's all about quality, and it's all about making whatever you're working on as good as you possibly can right to the last second, and that's what will deliver to an audience.
It's really interesting you say that, the last second theory, because one of the things that I wouldn't say it's a bee in my bonnet, but it's something that I've noticed with movies of whatever sort, whether they're Hollywood studio movies or movies made in Iran for £75,000, is that how few movies have a good ending. How very few.
You've got to have a good ending.
Yeah, that loads of movies I see seem to be premises. They seem to be like, I've got an idea for a film, and they've got the first act, and it's amazing, and then I know, I'm consciously or not, I'm using very old-fashioned concepts, first act, second act, third act. But by the time we get to the third act, I'm thinking, well, what happened to us?
There's a direct correlation between the last 10 minutes of a movie and the box office.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah. I mean, you have a great last 10 minutes, people walk out satisfied, excited. They can forgive things. You know, if you have a fantastic first 10 and then the rest of it's not very good, you're done. But if you have a great ending and you've still got them there, the audiences will remember that and talk about that.
But it takes time. And you know, we're very lucky because we're a mature company and we have a lot in development and all the rest of it, so we don't have to get that film into production because that's the way we get paid. And, you know, quite often these things are taking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to develop to a point where it's worth making them, as it were. And that a lot of producers don't have that luxury. We do, because we've been at it for a while and we've got a great depth of development.
On that point, can we now, I'd love to play in the trailer for the first movie that Working Title has at Tiff this year, which is Victoria and Abdul. So if we could bring that in now, please.
I'm 81 years of age and have almost 1 billion citizens. I've been in office 62 years, making me the longest-serving monarch in history. Have we finished?
Abdul, you will travel to England, to the royal household. You will present the Queen with a ceremonial coin.
Whatever you do, you must not look at Her Majesty.
There's a famine in India.
Prime Minister, you really are terribly depressing.
Yes.
Really, Her Majesty.
I suddenly feel a great deal better.
She has requested Mr. Kareem be her personal footman.
How do you like your Scottish costumes?
They're very scratchy.
Everything in Scotland is scratchy.
What can they be talking about?
What is a mango?
The queen of fruit.
I would like a mango.
They only grow in India.
Well, I'm Empress of India, so I have 1 cent. No one really knows what it's like to be queen.
Mother!
Are you spying on me? Everyone I've loved has died, and I just go on and on. What is the point?
Service, Your Majesty. We are here for a greater purpose.
You are a servant no longer. You will teach me Urdu and the Quran.
You've upset the order of everything.
Drop this Indian peasant, or we will have you certified insane.
Treason! I am cantankerous, greedy, fat. I am perhaps disagreeably attached to power, but I am anything but insane. I am Queen of England, Empress of India. Abdul has risen on his own merits. Now, He is my friend. I haven't been as happy as this for years.
A little surprise.
What is it?
A mango, Your Majesty.
It's off. Sir Henry, this mango is off.
I was just saying, it's very kind of, it's almost moving to see Judi Dench back in that role. I mean, I know that Mrs. Brown was a Harvey Weinstein film, I think I'm right in saying, but this strikes me as an example of what you're talking about, is that the historical British period movie is something that is so potent, and everybody can understand it. It's almost like, to our generation, what in a way the Western was to an earlier generation, that you could use it as a genre that everybody understands in a way, and everybody can relate to. How long were you working on Victoria and Abdul before it came to the screen?
We bought the book initially about 5 or 6 years ago, and then for one reason or another, we actually didn't go through with developing the project, so we gave it back to the producer and the writer. They then wrote it on their own account and then brought it back to us. It was a weird, convoluted situation, and then we got back involved. So probably the total period was about 5 or 6 years, but the most recent period was probably about 2 or 3, so relatively quick. And you're right, the idea of a landscape that people are familiar with. You know, this film, or Darkest Hour, or Mary Queen of Scots, or some of these, the Stephen Hawking film, Theory of Everything, they are our superhero movies. You know,
yeah, exactly.
In terms of,
They've
you know,
sort of
they have IP attached to them, where, you know, their brand awareness and brand loyalty in some cases, so that we can sell them into the marketplace with some kind of awareness, but we can still make the kind of films that we want to make, without having to buy incredibly expensive IP that actually isn't even really available.
By IP, this is intellectual property, the concept of intellectual property, that it's not, as it were, like buying a YA series of novels where you have to kind of...
No, luckily they're all in the public domain.
No, it's true. I mean, it's like Shakespeare.
Exactly. Almost.
They're free. I mean, what must be a part of the potency and the penetrative power, in a way, of, let's say, for example, Queen Victoria, is that speaks to... I don't know if it speaks to anybody here. Technically, our present Queen is the head of state of Canada, but that's not quite what I mean, is that our current Queen, we're talking about Queen Victoria, who's at the very last years or months of her life and her reign, and this is almost, I hardly dare say it out loud, is what Queen Elizabeth, our own Queen Elizabeth II is as well. So do you think part of the power of this is it does, whether you like it or not, whether you're a Republican or a monarchist, it kind of speaks to your sense of, you know, a sense of an ending, almost.
What do you think, Tiff?
No, I actually think it's, with these historical pieces, and we have done, it is a kind of genre for working title. It's about getting, you know, Eric's right, there's IP in that people know who these people are, but you've got to make sure there's a really good story, piece of narrative story going through it, which is usually about a chunk of their life, but also you've got to make sure there's some real emotional impact. And, you know, Judi gives a very emotional performance in this film, and that's what the takeaway is, I think.
I mean, we start with these films, as Tim just said, as, is it a good story? Can we get great actors in it? Is there a fantastic director? Do we think people will enjoy it? And then often what happens, the zeitgeist catches up rather than us exploiting the zeitgeist. So, you know, you've got a film like Darkest Hour, which we'll talk about in a minute, which people will want to talk about leadership, but we didn't know that Brexit was going to happen, or a change in, you know, the mood in the world was going to happen. So often they play into the events, and then you get asked, what statement are you making? We're not. We're just making great stories and hoping that people will go and see them. Occasionally we'll make a film that does have a political message, but these two are hopefully just good films.
And I think you don't go at them thinking that it actually started with Elizabeth. We made a movie about Elizabeth 20 years ago. And that was a modern modern feeling movie. And I think if you talk to Joe Wright, he'll say, I never think of any of these films as being period. I just think of it as a great scene that I'm going to shoot, basically, and they happen to be in period costume and they happen to be in a period set, you know, and I think that's taking that sort of contemporary approach to it is really important, because that's what an audience will cotton on to. The great thing I thought of Elizabeth is that it's such a complex dissection of court politics. Yeah. It's a kind of movie that you can't let it wash over you. You have to sit on the edge of your seat to make sure you understand what's going on. Yeah. And the negotiations with Francis Walsingham and Elizabeth I, I love it because it is about power and it's not something. It's not a period movie that you can let wash all over you. You have to make sure you understand what's going on. No, because it's like playing chess. Movie. It was Let's Make the Godfather set in Tudor England. Basically. Yeah, exactly.
This is really good news because Darkest Hour is a bit like that, so he's going to love it.
He's going to love it. He's a 5-star. It's a 5-star.
Make sure you look at the Guardian review tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, do you know what I was going to ask about? I mean. What do you think about reviews? I mean, I very rarely do Q&As like this without the director kind of turning on me. At one stage,
we would never
I mentioned Ken Loach's Land and Freedom.
Well, we didn't do that one.
Yeah, we did. He did.
We did. Hidden Agenda. What was it called? Hidden Agenda.
Hidden Agenda. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I did. You got the conversation with Ken Loach, and Ken Loach sort of spent more or less of the time giving me a pretty good bollocking about the Guardian's failure to support socialism in all its forms, and so I had to sort of.
I've had that
I'm awfully sorry, Ken. Failure to support Jeremy Corbyn, which he thought, and he's so. We'd like to say the critics don't really matter, but they do, and we spend a lot of time reading them and worrying about them and all the rest of it. I think it is. It's an unholy alliance. It is an unholy alliance. I mean,
we're looking forward to making a movie with you, so that you can experience.
So I can experience. Well, I know. Yes, I can experience
what it's like when the darts come in.
Yeah. You can't. It is. But by the time you finished a movie, it is a bit like one of your children because you've spent so much time, tender, loving care, and attention, and it may, just like one of your children, not be very good, but you don't want to be told about it. But do you think that? But is it? I mean, if you get a good review or a bad review, do you think? Can you separate in your mind? You think, well, that's good because it's the Guardian. We can.
I think, to be fair, I only ever write to you when I truly believe in the film and can't understand. How you could have seen it in a different way. But, you know, we sometimes make films that aren't very good, and so you expect not very good reviews.
I sometimes write reviews which are wrong, so, you know, I hardly dare admit it to you. But what the other thing... But you never set out to make a bad movie. The truth of it is, but it can happen anywhere in the foundation. And also, sadly, you work just as hard on a bad movie as you do on a good movie, and so that's the thing. And, you know, we always... Having made the decision to make a movie, we want to make it as good as we possibly can. And it may be that there's something in the foundation that means you're building the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but it doesn't mean you work any less hard. I've got another question I want to ask about this, but I think what I'd like to do is to play in Darkest Hour at this stage. Okay, could we play in the trailer, please, for Darkest Hour?
We must now select my successor, and it's only one man the opposition will accept.
He stands for one thing, and one thing only, himself.
Why have I been forced to send for Churchill? His record is a catastrophe.
Let them see your true qualities, your lack of vanity.
Yeah, I will.
Your sense of humour.
Ho, ho, ho. Your Majesty.
It is my duty to invite you to take up the position of Prime Minister of this United Kingdom.
I speak to you for the first time as Prime Minister.
The Germans have encircled 60 British and French divisions. We are looking at a collapse of Western Europe within the next few days.
How long have they got if we don't rescue them?
Maybe 2 days. We would need a miracle to get our men out.
You have the full weight of the world on your shoulders.
We're facing certain defeat on land, the annihilation of our army, and imminent invasion. We must negotiate peace talks.
When will the lesson be learned? You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth!
Nonsense. The only slippery slope.
Would you stop interrupting me while I am interrupting you? We have before us many, many long months of struggle and suffering.
Even though many old and famous states have fallen into the grip of the Nazi rule,
we shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. For without victory, there can be no survival.
See, I think Churchill is another character, another quasi-Shakespearean character like Queen Victoria, who's an IP kind of...
he's an IP kind of guy.
An asset. Yeah. And what do you think? I mean, it's kind of, again, it's kind of moving to see Sid Vicious become Winston Churchill. I mean, it's an amazing thought. Maybe it's not that much of a leap, actually. Maybe there is elements of Sid Vicious.
That was both Gary and my first movie, Sid and Nancy.
Okay, yeah.
So we go, and we do laugh about it a lot, the idea that he's gone from Sid to
I still kind of can't believe
Winston,
it, actually. When I see him, maybe it just dates me.
Yeah.
I cannot think of him as anything other than Sid Vicious or maybe Joe Walton. I mean, it seems to be sort of amazing, but that just dates me.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Brexit and about, does Brexit colour the way we see these things now? Do you think Brexit, a kind of little Englandism, has infected our country and we have to see it in a different way now, or what do you think? I mean, I was going to ask you whether you think Brexit hurts the business, quite aside from these.
Who knows? But I think the politics of the last 2 years have just altered things so fundamentally that it's going to find its way into our film culture somehow. I'm not quite, but we're only at the edge of that. I think, and who knows how it does that. But
I mean, on a technical basis, yes, it'll hurt because it'll be harder to move actors and crew, backwards and forwards. It'll be a nightmare to move material, cameras and equipment without carnets and God knows what. So yeah, on the technical side, it'll be a pain. And as Tim says, whether it'll start flowing into the way stories are told, we'll see.
I mean, British cinema has done so well in the last decade because we have such a healthy tax credit. Like, in fact, Canada's got a brilliant tax credit for visual effects, but we have a brilliant production tax credit, and how that's all going to sit in amongst it all.
Will that necessarily change? I mean,
probably not, but you go onto a film crew and there are people from all over Europe working on it, and if we read what was leaked in The Guardian and interpret it correctly, then that's not going to be the case in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
So it seems mad, but we're not politicians.
Yeah, exactly. You rise above it. Exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to do now is to invite some questions from the audience. If anyone have, and if you could wait, please, until the microphone is with you. I think there's somebody right here. Yes, please.
Hi. Short statement. I was at the screening of Laundrette. However many years ago. I think it was my first or second Tiff. And to see that film, and you guys are a part of the explosion of British cinema with Mike Leigh and Hanif Kureishi and Stephen Frears and all of that, and just congratulations. And then I saw Darkest Hour yesterday at the P&I screening, so great that you're continuing that. A question though, you're running what's really a mini major production company. How much time do you get to spend actually on the films? You're running the company, but then you're making these fantastic films. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, all the time is spent on the films. That's what we do. The company is actually very small, and each film then becomes huge. So all of our employees predominantly are employed on individual projects. So, and Tim and I run films separately so we can do more. And it's all about the movies. Everything is about the movies.
One of the reasons we went with Polygram in the first place and then with Universal is that we had been independents and we spent no time on the movies because you were running around trying to organise distribution and the money and all the rest of it. And we realised, both of us realised that actually the films weren't very good, and we needed to spend the time on making sure the creative side of the films was absolutely on, and that's what we both love doing.
When the finance and the distribution are locked, and also we've done 60-something films with the team at Universal at the moment, and it's just brilliant. You know exactly who to talk to in Croatia or Germany or America or about this issue, so everything works seamlessly and beautifully, which allows Tim and I to focus on helping get the films as good as possible. That answer the question.
I just wanted to ask you how you choose the scripts. All of your films, I've been lucky enough to see just about all of them. How do you choose the scripts to have such beautifully complex, drawn, passionate women in them? Is that a wonderful coincidence, or are you actually making a choice?
We have a fantastic development department and that's worked with us for many years. It's made up of fantastic women, in actual fact.
The whole company is virtually made up of women, so the humanity of everything we do is because of them, not Tim or I.
Yeah. But we do, joking aside, is that getting the script right and then getting the cut right is the most important creative thing that we can do, because everything flows from the screenplay, and one has to be very disciplined, and you have to allow it to take time, basically, and it takes a lot of time.
Yes. I think...
Hi. My question is very simple. How can we have more diversity in British films, particularly with regards to the narratives? Britain is changing fundamentally today. It's a very different Britain. How can we make films that are a bit more representative?
Well, we have a very solid answer for you because we agree. We're actually, Tim's been driving it, but we're starting a sixth form college school in the UK for up to 1,000 students. And we are trying to ensure that we get an absolutely diverse set of students, and the school is predominantly to teach filmmaking and screen, all form of screen activities. And so we're trying to start right at the bottom to try and educate people, get people from ethnic backgrounds into diverse backgrounds into the industry.
And to make them realise that it's a possibility.
Yeah,
so
make them realise there's a possibility, there's an opportunity,
yeah.
and then hope that their voices will multiply exactly what you're talking about.
We couldn't agree more. And when we go to Pinewood or to studios, and the fact is that they're not diverse, and that's not right.
We don't have an answer for a quick fix, but that's what we hope.
No, but we realised that you had to go back and start at an education level, and then that will go through the system. And as one gets older, one realises that actually happens quite quickly.
Yes.
Hi there, my name is Siobhan McCarthy. Thank you so much for your body of work over the years. You're just an amazing power team. And to that, I'm curious, how do you work... how do you come to consensus amongst the two of you?
He does everything I say. Or it might actually be the other way around, I'm not sure.
Yeah. We kind of know what each of us likes. And I was actually just thinking today, so it's getting much more mixed up than it used to be, is that because we used to be quite clear about who we work with in terms of creative relationships and all the rest of it, but actually it's all into a big pot and everyone's working with everybody. And I think what you do is you kind of think, what will he think, a little bit in the back of your mind about certain decisions, and I think that dictates them, which is a good thing. It's a discipline. It's a quality thing.
I never actually asked you how you two met. Was there a kind of meet cute that we should know about? I mean,
No, I remember. I think I remember the first time is because we both ran music video companies, and for some reason, your company was called Fugitive, wasn't it? Was it?
No, it was called.
What was the very first one called?
I can't remember.
But all I remember was that there were a lot of very skinny and very, believe it or not, hairy people, basically, and Eric had an afro of hair at that point and a big grin, and I thought, oh, that's a very nice man. And then we were in parallel through the 80s. We were both making music videos. Eric made Sid and Nancy. I did The Laundrette, and then we came together.
Right. Yes, I think we have another question over here.
Initial,
that was it.
Hello. I'm a writer from Armenia, and I have a question. It's one of the basic ones, but I'm just wondering how you pick up new talents in the film industry, new writers. I'm sure that this question you got 100 of times, but just interesting.
Our team are very good at working with and reading and knowing about new talent. I mean, and that whenever we develop a script, we tend to go out to a number of different writers, and we'll go out to all sorts of different people, and it'll be less experienced as well as more experienced people on that list. And you know, I think the thing is it's a creative company, and if we don't invest in youth and new ideas and all the rest of it, then it will die basically. So all along, we've always had to make sure there's new creative talent coming into the business.
And I mean, we gave Edgar Wright his first film, Joe Wright his first film, Stephen Frears, Stephen Daldry, Sharon Maguire.
We're really old.
Many others, you know, Gary Oldman, Kate Blanchett. I mean, there's Emma Thompson. There's so many people that we love it when we find new talent and can work with them and then watch them explode. It's very satisfying, very exciting.
Another thing, do you watch short films, and do you check out the sort of BAFTA-winning short films and say, "Wow, this"?
Personally,
this
not, but there are people who do very much do in working title.
I watch the occasional one, but
I just wondered, the big question: is it worth making a short film? The answer is yes.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, if a short film bubbles up, then it definitely comes to the attention of our development department, and then we meet the director or the writer attached to it.
Right. Yes, we have one more.
I'm a huge fan. Tim, I sent you a package back in 1993.
Sorry, I haven't got around to it yet.
It's okay. It's never too late to
respond. He was talking about it in the green room. He must get around to it, yeah.
It's on his desk.
Yeah, it really is.
It's printed out. It's an actual script I sent you, not a USB key.
Yeah.
I have a question about your relationship with the Coen brothers, because you talk so much about British cinema, and obviously the Coen brothers aren't British. So how did that come about, and what, and especially The Big Lebowski, because I'm curious about how that all developed, because I know the film was panned when it came out, and then it's become such a cult classic and a huge inspiration for me.
Yeah. It actually came about because of Ken Loach, weirdly. We were making a film with Ken, who refuses to hire movie stars, and the financiers at the time were a company called Hemdale, and they said, we'll only give you the money if you have a movie star in it. And Frances McDormand had just been in the film Mississippi Burning, and sent her the script. She really liked it. Hemdale really liked her. Said they'd pay for the movie if she was in it, and Ken Loach wasn't keen because she was a movie star. So we sent him to Hollywood to meet her, and I remember, this tells you everything you need to know about Ken, sent him business class, and he came back and he said, I was really upset that you sent me business class, and I was like, oh God, we couldn't afford first class, and he goes, I fly economy. Anyway.
I've got an anecdote about that, actually.
So he comes back, cut to, she's in the movie, and just before she's about to sign a contract, she goes, you know what, I haven't seen my husband for ages. He's been making this film called Barton Fink. I can't do the movie, got to stay in New York. So we said, okay, what if we give you, as a 7-week shoot, we'll give you 7 Concorde tickets, because Concorde was still operating then. You can go home Friday evening, and the money basically was coming out of our fee. It was just like, how the hell are we going to make this happen? And she agreed to it, and instead of her going home Friday night, coming back Sunday evening, Joel Cohen came to London every weekend, and we became firm friends, and then Tim and I got close with Ethan and Joel as well, and it went from there. And we've had a fantastic relationship working with them for, I think we've done 8 or 9 movies with them. It's been brilliant. But that's how weird things happen in our business. It's kind of fun.
I just wondered, I have a 2-part question actually. The first one is, what do you think of Merchant Ivory Films?
And the second part is, how do I pitch you?
I love merchant ivory movies. And they were very much part of our culture through the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And there were some fantastic films. I remember Room of Views with Daniel was in that, wasn't he?
So he was indeed. He played Cecil Vyse in that.
He did it at the same time as My Beautiful Laundrette, and came out of both of them.
85, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
but they were, they had a really important imprint for many years in British cinema. And they preceded us in many ways. They were making slightly more traditional movies, but they were finding a pretty big audience, those films. And you pitch us through our...
Well, you send all your scripts to peter.bradshaw at theguardian.com.
And I sort of say, if it's 4 stars or above, I hand it on to them.
He will give us an early look at the review, and we'll then determine whether we're going to make it or not.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I'd be delighted. It would be an honour. I would be like the Kenneth Tynan of my day. It would be amazing. It would be amazing. Okay, I think we've got time for 1 or 2 more. We're sort of, we are really close on the edge now. But yes, one more.
You haven't worked with yet, whom you would like to?
I'm sure there are plenty of directors that we would like to.
Number 1 on the bucket list. Number 1 on the bucket list.
The director you want to work with.
Oh.
That's a diplomatically difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. It's probably, it's probably somebody who's still at film school or something like that, to be quite honest.
Very diplomatic.
That's very diplomatic. Do we have one more? Just one more? Yes.
Hi there, thank you for coming. This is really insightful, and I love all the films that you guys have done. So, although we were talking about all these successes, I want to hear some failures. I want to hear like horror stories of stuff that has happened to you too. And it's like, oh crap, this can't happen, or oh crap, like something's gone wrong.
We don't tend to discuss this in public.
It's always good to have.
It happens every day, though.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, because we have an LA office, so every morning you wake up, emails come in, and there's a moment like that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure all of you, any of you are in the industry making films, you have the same thing.
Producing is a non-stop event of trying to steal a little bit of victory from the jaws of disaster.
Yeah.
I think that is a very appropriate moment to end on. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming, and please give another to Mr. Tim Bevan and Eric Fellner.